Hello, everyone. With the permission of my team, I'll start today's webinar. I welcome one and all who are attending today's webinar on the on overcoming challenges in the biometric authentication and enrollment. This webinar is being conducted in collaboration with is being conducted by UIDAI in collaboration with IIIT Hyderabad and our knowledge partner MSc, Microsave Consulting. For all the attendees who are maybe not aware of UIDAI, it is the short form for Unique Identification Authority of India, which is a statutory authority under the Government of India, mandated with the task of issuing a 12-digit digital identity card to its 1.3 billion residents. It's the largest biometric identity project in the world, and a successful one at that. And it is based out of taking 3 biometric parameters of each individual and being able to deduplicate such identities across large galleries and confirm the uniqueness of such identity. This, I'm sure, kindles a lot of interest amongst a lot of biometric industry partners as well as academic partners. And today, the idea of this webinar is to bring such like-minded people together to talk about the challenges in this domain. People who have been working with biometrics, use of biometrics for establishing digital identities. India has been a stalwart in establishing this project, and so successfully over the years. But there are still some challenges that we are facing. And we hope that through holding such webinars, this is probably the first among many that we will be holding, in the interest of the ecosystem as well as in the interest of UIDAI. We are hoping that such webinars will allow the ecosystem to exchange ideas, as well as for UIDAI interest of enabling the ecosystem to interact and finding better solutions and finding the solutions for the problems that countries like us are facing for use of biometric for ID and other systems. Today, we are fortunate to have amongst us the CEO of UIDAI, Shri Amit Agarwal sir. Sir is a senior officer of the Government of India and leading the UIDAI project since the last 1 year. He has been an engineer by profession from the prestigious IIT Kharagpur, as well as has been associated with pioneering projects, including India's Digital Privacy Act and the upcoming regulations. Within UIDAI, he has been leading the team with passion and conviction and has been instrumental for many of the new initiatives within UIDAI towards forwarding our goal of ensuring a secure digital identity for all. He is currently also the DG of NIC, Government of India. With us, we also have our esteemed speaker and a longtime friend and comrade, I would say, Shri Anil Jain. He has been in the founding team of UIDAI in its initial inception. And we also have Professor Anoop Namboodiri from IIIT Hyderabad. We have collaborated with IIIT for forwarding a challenge, a biometric SDK benchmarking challenge. CEO sir will be talking more about it. We also have Dr. Pramod and Dr. Vivek Raghavan with us, and Professor Buch from NTNU, an esteemed professor in the field of biometrics. I'm hoping that we will have a very engaging session today, and we have a surprise for all the participants on how UIDAI is going to do a soft launch of a new platform, which will enable the biometrics domain to something which was not accessible to them earlier. Over to you, CEO sir. Please share your ideas on the conduct of this event. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tanushree, for the introduction. And at the outset, let me welcome the speaker and the panelists Professor Anil Jain and Professor Christoph Buch, Pramod Varma and Vivek Raghavan, who always handled us for long and helped lay the foundations of this entire enterprise. And of course, Professor Anoop Namboodiri, who's the moderator and helped us organize this, as well as our partners, IIIT Hyderabad and Microsafe Consulting. And I thank also all the participants who've joined us on this webinar. Just to give a larger context to what we are doing and how we are doing things. This is of a piece, what we are doing is of a piece with India's overall approach, which India has articulated during its G20 presidency of sharing with the world all its knowledge and experience, not with any commercial motive, but with on principle. UIDAI is a statutory enterprise with a public purpose. It has no commercial motive. And India has said in the spirit of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam that the whole world is one family with one future and it's one earth. It is in that spirit that we engage in the sharing of knowledge, in the growing of technology and solutions. We happen to hold basis our 1.5 decades of experience of running India's digital identity at population scale. Immense amount of data. To give you a sense of it, till date, we performed over 112 billion authentications, and every day we are performing 70 to 80 billion authentications, and a good proportion of that is biometric authentication. So that's the kind of experience and scale and diversity which is available with us. And we understand that it is not just that we would be sharing that through such initiatives. We would equally help grow the space of knowledge and solutioning on this, and therefore in the process we too will gain equally, and therein lies our interest in doing all this, and to engage on a sustained basis beyond today's webinar, beyond a bio challenge and a bio challenge at UIDAI initiative, which will consist of a bio challenge at UIDAI platform and a leaderboard around that will help benchmark solutions and maybe throw open opportunities for UIDAI itself as well as others in the ecosystem to really discover benchmarked solutions, explore potential engagements by way of partnerships, research, procurement, and so on and so forth, and maybe give them access to also reach out to others through this whole mechanism. And that is the hope with which we are engaging in this. In this entire exercise, we have while we've engaged from the beginning with fingerprints and iris scans, we now have nearly a 1.5-year-old experience again at population scale and rapidly growing at that with face biometrics. There are a lot of things to be discovered, a lot of solutions happening. The use cases to which these are applied are numbering almost close to 2,500. So there is again tremendous diversity, and with those use cases, we continuously get a lot of feedback and asks both from end user organization as well as Aadhaar number holders of what is expected, the issues and the challenges they face, which continuously spur us on to improve things in the journey. Apart from enabling organizations and end use individuals, we also face a continuous journey with frauds and attempts to fraud, and our continuous learning and effort through AI as well as analytics and operational rules to really try and control. So all of this is a continuous live organic universe which is there, and there's a lot of need and space for us to have enterprising people and academia and industry and research, everybody to really help this grow. So that is really the hope with which we are engaged, and that is I look forward to the outcome of this engagement and look at it as a beginning of a continuing journey that all of us and more of us will engage in. So that is all from my side, and with that, over to you again, Tanushree, to take this forward.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words of inspiration will carry us forward towards this initiative. I now request the launch of the SDK benchmarking competition through the curtain raiser event through a small video. Over to my team to play the video. Thank you. I hope that excites a lot of minds who are working in this area. That the challenges will come up soon and will be available on our website. Please follow our UIDAI link on Twitter, X, and other channels. I would now call upon Professor Anoop to introduce Professor Anil Jain, who has been working with us for such a long time, right from the inception of UIDAI. Professor Anoop, over to you to please introduce Professor Anil Jain before his presentation on the challenges on biometrics for enrollment and authentication.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanushree, for that introduction part. I would like to now introduce Professor Anil Jain, who will be giving his initial talk, followed by the panel discussion. We will introduce the panelists after the talk. So first, we have a talk by Professor Anil Jain. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Professor Anil Jain, who is also a mentor and guide to me. Anil Jain is a university distinguished professor and a Douglas E. Zonker endowed professor at Michigan State University, where he has taught and conducted research for the last 50 years. Jain was inducted into the United States National Academy of Engineering, the Indian National Academy of Engineering, the World Academy of Sciences, and Chinese Academy of Sciences, and also the National Academy of Inventors for his many inventions in pattern recognition and biometrics. Professor Jain has also been the editor-in-chief of IEEE Transactions on Pattern Analysis and Machine Intelligence, one of the most prestigious journals in the field. And he was awarded the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Humboldt Fellowship, and the Fulbright Fellowships, and also the IAPR Kingston Fu Prize. He was appointed as the Defense Science Board and Forensic Science Standard Board, and also he was involved in the National Academy study on face recognition and its capabilities, future prospects, and in governance. He has authored several foundational books. Most of the fundamental books in biometrics actually originate from him, including the basic books like Introduction to Biometrics, Handbook of Face Recognition, Handbook of Fingerprint Recognition, and also he's written a classic book on algorithms for clustering data. He has a large number of discoveries in the field of biometrics, and he has done several services to the research community, building up the community all across the world, and has done extensive mentorship. And for all these award efforts, he was also awarded the Doctor Honoris Causa by the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, and also Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and also the Hong Kong Baptist University. So that's a very brief introduction to Professor Jain. We could go on for long with his background and the bio, but that would be stopping you from listening to the more exciting things that Professor Jain has to say. So over to you, Professor Jain. And before starting, to the participants, you can ask questions in the Q&A channel. You can type it there, and I would ask it. If you really need to talk, then you can also raise your hands, and then we can let you talk directly after the talk from Professor Jain. And you will also have time to interact and ask questions to the the panelist during the panel discussion afterwards. So over to you, Professor Jain.
Thank you, Anoop. It is an honor to be invited to make a presentation at this workshop. This is an exciting day for biometrics community because Aadhaar is opening up its database in the sense of evaluation of algorithms. Aadhaar data will not be available, but just like the NIST evaluation, which is primarily restricted to forensics, law enforcement, and some civil applications for the population in the United States, Aadhaar, as the CEO pointed out, generates the biometrics data, which is at such a large scale and diversity that is mind-boggling. And so, to me, this is a major event because now we will push the biometric technology, recognition technology, the latency to its limit which has never been done before. So with that, let's just first fully understand the Aadhaar. Most of you know Aadhaar, but you don't know how the process works and what are the complexity involved in Aadhaar. And that will help us list a bunch of challenges which we hope the vendors, the university academic researchers will follow up. So as has been pointed out, Aadhaar is a country scale, and it's not a small country. It's 1.5 billion population. Currently is 1.4 billion. It is estimated to saturate at 1.7 billion in 2060. But the data, once it enters the Aadhaar database system, never leaves. So cumulatively, we estimate that the Aadhaar gallery will be close to 2 billion or more. And so now we are discussing now the deduplication from 1 to 2 billion. This has never been done, right? I mean, the largest database after Aadhaar is perhaps the Indonesia national ID, which is about maybe 200 or 250 million people. There's a diverse demographics of India. It is a secular country, which is multilingual, multi-ethnic community, and that's important from the purpose of the sensitivity involved in collecting biometric data. There is also a large rural population in India and those involved in the service and manufacturing industry. So the quality of the data obtained from those individuals pose certain challenges. The enrollment, deduplication, and authentication. As the CEO already pointed out, there are 80 million authentications per day using different devices at different merchants under different conditions, and the response has to be in real time. When I say real time, within 1 to 2 seconds. So with that, we will go ahead and look at the stages involved in the biometric enrollment, deduplication, and authentication, which will help us then look at the challenges. You know, when India proposed the Aadhaar system in 2008, the general biometrics community and the experts in the field said it could not be done. But the foresight of the organizers of or designers of Aadhaar, you know, even though face recognition was its infancy in 2008, they made sure that they collected the data. And to understand the limitations of individual biometrics, they collected 2 irises, all 10 fingerprints, and a face image. Some demographic data was also collected, but the objective was not to deny Aadhaar to anyone. Even if some digits are missing, there's no proof of date of birth, no proof of a permanent residence, Aadhaar card or 12-digit number must be provided to everybody. And the Aadhaar Act of 2016 clearly says that the purpose of this is efficient, transparent, and targeted delivery of subsidies. And this is also important to understand that this database is not linked to any other databases in the country, and it cannot be shared with anybody in the country. This is not for the purpose of law enforcement, immigration, or other things. There are certain set of services for which Aadhaar database can be used. At its peak of enrollment, when it started, data collection started in 2009, there were hundreds of thousands of enrollment centers. Now the number of enrollment centers have gone down because the majority, or I would say 99% of the population is enrolled already. But still, enrollment is a continuous operation. 25 million babies are born every year. And even though the enrollment starts at the age of 5, every year you have this 25 million individuals who would need to be enrolled into the system. In addition, Aadhaar is not restricted to Indian citizens. It can also be a resident of India can also apply for Aadhaar for the services for which it is offered. The enrollment centers differ in the conditions. They are in rural areas, they are in urban areas, the facilities are different, illumination is different. Operators, there perhaps, I don't know exact number, but probably there are still several thousand enrollment centers. Now, there are some standards which are in place, which is extremely important, where the devices have to be certified and the operator training is standardized. But still, these different operating conditions do pose challenges as the devices get upgraded. There's also certain issues involved with the aging of the device. Do the performance stays the same over 10 to 20 years? So this is some example of the enrollment images from the SLAP scanner 442 acquisition. We segment individual images. There are 2 iris images and 1 face image. As I mentioned, the minimum age of enrollment is 5 years, with re-enrollment happens at age 15. And as I mentioned, age is not verified. We take it for granted if somebody comes and says, my child is 5 years. The most interesting and the exciting part is the deduplication. If we want to ensure that one person has only one 12-digit ID, we want to make sure that this person does not go to a different enrollment center and demands a Aadhaar number. So when an applicant comes and says, I need an Aadhaar number, we collect the biometric data. No demographic information is used because we don't know how to trust the demographic information. It is searched against the enrollment database of biometrics. So as I mentioned, current database size is approximately 1.5 billion. And the output is the person already in the database or not in the database? And the metrics for determining the performance of the deduplication is false positive identification rate and false negative identification rate. And Aadhaar has set internally the values which are acceptable, but there is a manual adjudication in case somebody who does not already have an Aadhaar card is denied because his biometrics matches with somebody else's biometric. Then there is an adjudication process involved. I remember this curve very well in 2008 or 2009. There are others in the room who may also recall this on why the fusion. We had to demonstrate that the fusion of biometrics will improve the deduplication performance. And so that is where this FNIR and FPIR comes, and lower the curve, the better it is. So the fusion of iris and 10 print combined results in the blue curve. At that time, face recognition was not accurate. So it was not in the mix in terms of deduplication. Of course, the things have changed now. And I'm sure Aadhaar internally is doing, or the Aadhaar vendors are using face for deduplication as well. But this was like the proof of concept for biometric fusion for large-scale deduplication. And this is what happens at the authentication, and this ultimately this is what the delivery of service is all about, and reducing the fraud. So it's a 2-factor authentication, the 12-digit number, and one of the biometric. We don't take all the biometrics for throughput reasons, and in this particular case, one index finger is being used. And among all the possible biometric modalities which can be used for authentication, fingerprint still continues to be the most popular, but it's quite possible that face recognition may overtake that over time. Iris is perhaps not as commonly used for authentication, but it is necessary for deduplication. So this is the whole scenario, and there is a lot of interesting statistics on the Aadhaar dashboard. So this is one figure from the Aadhaar dashboard showing the authentication. This is reported in the monthly rate. So in June 2024, which is probably not yet fully complete, there were 72 billion authentications. And so that if you divide it by 30 or so, it comes to about 80 million biometric transactions or authentications every day. So now, given this, we can talk about the challenges. Of course, I'm not going to talk about how to overcome that. That will be another workshop. But the main challenges are the image quality, and as NIST has also indicated in its testing and evaluation report, the single most factor affecting the biometric recognition accuracy is the image quality. I mean, there may be some other things, gender and so on, but the age, older people may have a lower image quality due to wrinkles and so on. But the quality is the most important thing. And there are extrinsic quality versus the intrinsic factors. So there are some people may have very dry skin and so on. There may be cuts and bruises because of the occupation, the use of henna at certain times of the year may also cause problems with the biometric. So the question is, how do we take care of that? Well, I mean, one of the main things to do is to keep improving sensor quality, use some sensors which go maybe under the skin. But these are some of the factors which one has to keep investigating over a period of time. There have been cases of denial of service for people working in certain occupation, and that's an issue for a country like India, where there's a huge rural population, manual workers, and so on, which needs to be considered. Aging population in India, this is worldwide phenomena, but currently 10% of the population in India is above the age of 65. Not only that, we will see later on the time gap between the enrollment and the authentication is now coming to a level of about 15 years. So the first enrollment took place in 2009, 2010. We are in 2014. So now suddenly we have a need to evaluate the robustness of the matches with respect to time. The ergonomics is important. How does the user interact with the biometric sensor? How do we constantly upgrade the sensors and replace them? Maybe the sensor characteristics changes, it drifts over time. The cost of the sensor, of course, is coming down. The new types of sensor comes in. And then finally, the spoof detection. I know UID already has algorithms for spoof detection, but there are always new methods of spoofing. So this needs to be constantly checked. And of course, there's always an issue of collusion with the operator in terms of spoofing. What about the authentication and deduplication challenges? So there is a problem called cross-sensor matching. Enrollment is captured by fingerprint is captured by a different sensor during enrollment, and a different fingerprint sensor is capturing at the time of authentication. There are certain age-based use case of Aadhaar, but if the age is not verified or the date of birth is not verified at enrollment, can we update the age based on the face image at the time of authentication? There will be certain error, 2 to 3 years, but the question is, can we start investigating that? Aadhaar is about inclusion. So why are children being excluded? I mean, we have had conversations with UIDAI about this. There are 25 million babies born per year in India. Is there really a need to wait till the baby is 5 years old, the child is 5 years old to enroll children? Perhaps we can easily enroll a child at the age of 1 using fingerprints, and other modalities like iris and face can be added when we do the re-enrollment at age 5. For some individuals, time gap between enrollment and authentication is already 15 years. How robust are matches with respect to this time gap and for this demographics? But the bigger problem which I see is that since this is a civil ID system, people will be using it for their entire lifetime. I mean, one of the use cases is pension delivery. So for example, if the life expectancy in India currently is approximately 72 years, and as it's all common in other countries, the life expectancy, because of better health conditions, nutrition, and so on, keeps increasing. We are talking now about a 60-year gap or 70-year gap between authentication image, biometric image, and the enrollment image. And so nobody has ever tested how the biometric algorithms, recognition algorithms will perform at this time gap. So does it mean that we need to re-enroll the person after 15 at some point later, so age of 40, 50? So this is something, or the template update, this is something which opens some new challenges. And finally, we need to revisit the notion of capacity of biometric. What is the limit of the biometric? If for some reason we were to, or if we follow the United Nations and World Bank motto of identity for all, the world population is close to 8 billion. How do we proceed with that? Is it possible to do it with this mix of biometrics alone? So with that, I think I just want to summarize, which I have said the same thing, and if there are some questions, I can take it now or later. But I'm really excited. The whole biometrics community should be extremely excited about Aadhaar's bio challenge, because it will give vendors and academic groups to test their algorithms against challenging data with large time lapse, poor quality, and diverse demographics and sensors used to capture the data. This is very different from the NIST challenge, which does not have as much diversity of data, perhaps as much diversity of sensors, ethnicity, and time gap. With that, thank you for listening, and look forward to the panel session.
Thank you, Professor Jain. So we will definitely ask you some questions during the panel session. But before that, there is one question that someone has asked, Sridhar has asked. So if you could take this up. Can Professor Jain talk about face authentication, which he feels will overtake fingerprints? What would be the way forward in your view?
I think face authentication accuracy under semi-constrained settings is close to fingerprint recognition, and we would have fewer challenges in terms of poor quality fingerprints, which we encounter in many rural areas. And since face can be uncovered for biometrics, for benefit distribution, as is common in the enrollment process, there is no reason why for delivery of services and for authentication, face cannot be uncovered for this purpose. So I'm pretty, and at some point one could also capture fingerprints using contactless sensors like mobile phone, and that's another direction which should be investigated, because instead of putting hundreds of thousands of fingerprint readers at the merchant site or benefit distribution site or health clinic, why not use a mobile phone camera to capture face and fingerprints, which are the two predominant modalities for authentication. Iris is less commonly used. So for enrollment, we stick to the current ecosystem, which is in a supervised mode by trained operators. But for authentication, I think we should investigate the use of mobile phones. I mean, NIST has done evaluation on mobile capture, contactless to contact matching. Initially, there was a little gap in the performance between contactless to contact matching and contact to contact matching. But now that gap has narrowed down. And this is the kind of challenge we want to provide to the vendors and academic research groups.
Thank you, Professor Jain. There is one question from Prithvi, which effectively you answered in that in your answer. He was asking about contactless fingerprint capture using mobile phones. So that you
Yes.
already answered.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we will now move on to the next step, which is the panel discussion. Where you will have, of course, chance to ask questions even during the panel discussion. So it's my privilege now to introduce the rest of the panelists. We have Dr. Vivek Raghavan and Dr. Pramod Varma with us. We will also be joined by Professor Christoph Buch, but he would be joining a little later. So I will introduce him when he joins. So let me start with Pramod Varma. 1 second. Yeah. So Pramod has been kind of the leading architect of Aadhaar, and not just Aadhaar, but a whole lot of technologies that we currently use in India. So he has been the chief architect of most of India's digital public infrastructure efforts, starting with first Aadhaar, and then he did develop eSign, an interoperable digital signature protocol. He was key in designing the DigiLocker facility, which most of us use to store our credentials. It is currently used by over around 300 million people with nearly 6.5 billion credentials stored in it. And he was also instrumental in developing the UPI, the Unified Real-Time Payment System that we all use, which was launched in 2016 and currently doing something like 14 billion transactions a month. So it's a huge success. Every one of these efforts have been extremely successful. He also played a key role in designing and architecting India's indirect tax system, the GST, the digital health infrastructure, digital agricultural agri-infrastructure, digital education infrastructure, and also including the world's largest schooling platform named Diksha. In addition, he has also co-founded and created the Beacon protocol. It's an open source protocol that helps us create decentralized peer-to-peer networks. And the protocol is openly available for everybody to create whatever solutions you want to build on top of it. And it has been the backbone on which several other DPI like the ONDC and Namayatri, there are several mobile, there are cab hailing services and all that has been built on top of the Beacon protocol. And also the new decentralized energy network, UEI, has also been developed on top of it. The Beacon protocol has also been used by several other efforts all over the world, in Europe, Brazil, Africa, the US, and several other parts of the world. So he also serves as the chair of the Global Center for DPI, the Digital Public Infrastructure, and also serves as an advisor to many entities and initiatives in India and globally. He holds a master's and PhD degree in computer science and also a second master's in applied mathematics. He is passionate about technology, science, society, teaching, and I also know that he is also an avid mountain climber, painter. He's a very, very multifaceted personality. So I'm really happy to introduce you, Pramod. I have the pleasure to work with you for a long time. So thank you for agreeing to give your talk. And first, maybe you can, put your point of views across, and then we will take the questions at the end. So I'll introduce one panelist at a time, and then maybe you can talk, and then we'll go to Vivek. Yeah. Pramod, your turn. Yeah.
Thank you, Anoop. It's wonderful to be here. I didn't realize you're going to be reading out all that thing. It's really boring. I don't think anybody wants to listen to all that thing. But yeah, the journey has been, India's journey has been unique. as unique identification authority of India. So in one sense, truly India is one of those countries that repeated the population scale or societal scale changes. And it's all began with Aadhaar. So we are so proud to be, looking back 15 years and asking these hard questions again. And it's really very good to hear, very good to see. It's hard for government agencies to openly ask these questions. We have been in the system, and how it sometimes gets constrained and tricky to be fully that transparent and ask a lot of questions. But wonderful to see CEO leading from the front, asking these questions to see where else, how can we push the boundaries, and how can we ensure the original intent of Aadhaar is by empowering 1.4 billion people with identity, not only empowering them with identity, but truly letting them use it. And that's always been the hard part, right? Sometimes we get pushed back, our Supreme Court case, and sometimes, you do check and balance and get questioned and so on. Why are Aadhaar used? Why are you using it here, there? And you tend to be conservative. And the problem with being conservative is that we can't progress. And unless we ask real good questions, we can't progress either. So again, wonderful to see this happening. So just couple of sentences. I think everybody knows this history of Aadhaar, but and we have Vivek, who pretty much led from inside the biometric man here. So I don't want to talk about biometric. You guys are the gurus of biometric, but I can tell you the original intent of we should really relook at and reevaluate not only biometric from a technology perspective, from also asking the question, are we a lone warrior in dealing with all these issues ourselves, or how can we expand the ecosystem support around it? And ecosystem support can be in two-sided. One, supply side ecosystem. That means all the devices, the vendors, the algorithms that we are going to deploy inside UIDAI to make UIDAI perform better. That is a supply side ecosystem. But we could also ask the same question on the demand side ecosystem. Why can't we open up more federated authentication structures that allow layering of other biometric, private, and more limited usage identities, device-driven? I can do face auth, authenticate. The only thing I need is a token that authentication was successful. So we should ask the question, how can we leverage? One is, how can we improve inside? But we can also ask a larger question, which is the original intent of Aadhaar, is to truly create an inclusive and empowering identity system. Doesn't mean we have to do everything. So I would also urge all of you and the UIDAI team to ask that question, especially when it comes to authentication. Now, enrollment is a very peculiarly an issuer side. We are the identity issuer. In that sense, UIDAI has to issue identity. And hence all the enrollment related that Professor Anil Jain covered in terms of, time lapse, the older devices captured 15 years ago, 20 years ago later, 2035, when we look back and say, oh my God, that's like 25 years ago, we captured using devices. What happens to them? Do you re-enroll? Do we update? All those questions related to latent fingerprints, older devices, time lapse issues, all that thing need to be dealt with in the case of enrollment. And we need to improve the supply side ecosystem. And hence the bio challenge is very, very apt in actually allowing some of these new enrollment. And we can run that inside a closed sandbox. It's not that data is going out. Data will never go out by law. But you can create secure enclaves, so sandboxes in which these can be tested out by UIDAI under a controlled environment, but still allow innovators to provide that. That is what I think BioChallenge would really help. But on the auth side, we should really push the boundary, asking that question, what is the authentication improvement UIDAI can do, but also what are the other authentication that really strengthens and give choice to the people and choice to everybody in the ecosystem through federated authentication. And I've been watching the global trend in authentication, and you can see this with the technology improving. You can actually push authentication at the edges, and Vivek has been really pushing some of that early thoughts inside as well. But I think even the policy point of view, not biometric, policy point of view, I encourage the UIDAI leadership to look at a federated authentication as a policy to provide choice and newer layered authentication technologies without trying to do everything inside. I think that's where I'll stop, but we'll come back. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pramod. It's a wonderful set of comments. There are a lot of exciting things that you can do with federated and authentication at different levels. Instead of just authenticating the identity, if you want only to know whether the person is of 18 years old, then there could be an authentication where your identity is not revealed, but only the age is revealed. So there are several,
like zero knowledge proof, all that thing is coming up, and there's no way UIDAI can do everything, and UIDAI must allow layered ecosystem to do.
Absolutely. So it's a great opportunity actually to be built on top of Aadhaar. So thank you. There is one person who has raised his hand, Utsav Avaya. Do you have a question to Pramod? If you can,
maybe can complete the panel and
yes,
maybe come back. Maybe easier to collect questions.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay. So in that case, we will now thank you, Pramod, for those comments. We will come back to you now afterwards. We will now move to Vivek Raghavan. So once again, Vivek has been one of the early people who have been involved with Aadhaar, and he is involved in several aspects, but primarily has been in the biometric system building within Aadhaar. So Dr. Vivek Raghavan, I'll just quickly read out a few lines from his bio. He's an entrepreneur, technologist, and builder of digital public infrastructure. He co-founded Sarvam organization because of his belief that generative AI has the potential to impact lives for all Indians. So he has been very active in this field of generative AI, specifically for application of generative AI for Indian languages and solutions that can be built on top of it. He has been part of many population scale initiatives over the past decade and a half, and he played a key role in the design, implementation, and scale out of the technology platform, specifically the biometric system within Aadhaar. Of course, the world's largest identity program at this time. More recently, he was chief mentor to AI for Bharat and advisor to the Bhashini project that is trying to build open source data sets, models, and benchmarks for Indian languages. And that's a large effort that he has been part of. He holds an MS and PhD in electrical and computer engineering from Carnegie Mellon and a BTech from IIT Delhi. So Vivek, it's so nice to have you. Once again, he has a lot of inside knowledge, insight into what actually are the challenges technologically, especially related to biometrics inside Aadhaar. So we look forward to your comments first, and then we'll take questions.
No, I think firstly, thank you for having me on this panel. I think one of the things that, when I first joined Aadhaar, that was almost 15 years ago, we did not, I know the intent of Aadhaar was to actually build something that was there for population scale. But, while we understood that kind of at an intellectual level, I don't think that really that we understood that this is going to become so large and so central to everything that we do in India. And I think that is something that is, sometimes you marvel that that indeed happened. And I think that's something that, and in many cases, I would say that, and I think Pramod would agree with me on this, is that it is actually the success of Aadhaar which actually led to the thinking that, there are many ways in which that, that we can build all these different kinds of digital public infrastructure. Aadhaar is probably the starting point in some sense of much of the things that we're talking about. And I think if you look at the interesting thing about Aadhaar is that, the core of Aadhaar actually is a biometric system. And so therefore, the kinds of data that we have, and I think Professor Jain also alluded to it, as far as the different diversity and the longitudinal nature of the data that we have in Aadhaar is amazing. And actually, if you open this up for people to actually see, I mean, and to improve solutions, we actually can move not just, I mean, obviously Aadhaar can benefit from it, but I think the field of biometrics itself will benefit by these very unique kinds of data sets that probably nowhere else exist, and having access to that to actually lead to innovation is something that's important. And the reason why this is important, of course, is that Aadhaar was actually, and it's difficult, it's strange to think of it right now. Aadhaar was actually started when a mobile phone was not a common thing. A smartphone certainly was not a common thing in the country, right? And I think that so therefore you have to see in how things have changed and how we actually can have many opportunities to actually leverage what has been done here to actually and reimagine them. I think one of the reasons Aadhaar has been successful is actually in the design, right? That very clear design principles were used to build certain things.
Oh. Okay. I think we might have lost Dr. Vivek for a second.
Deep learning, we were just at the beginning of this, of things in deep learning, and things have really, changed and dramatically, improved. So therefore, I think looking at, and while I think Aadhaar actually has done a good job over the years in kind of reinventing and understanding all these new technologies and bringing them in, this is really an opportunity by which more people can actually kind of contribute to improving systems like this. Not necessarily Aadhaar, but biometrics itself. And I think that's the unique opportunity that is here there. And sometimes I also think, why are we? I mean, and I think that I think one of the things that we have to understand is that I think while Aadhaar has been a success, it can always be better, right? I mean, I think whether it is in terms of being able to give access to more people, or whether it is in detecting, and the more successful a system is, there are various frauds and attempts to kind of, subvert the system and things like that. So I think, and all of these things that actually bringing these things out and bringing them as challenges to people to actually look at this and try and figure out new kinds of solutions that can help in these things, right? I mean, and I think that in the end, I think that if even one person is denied service because of the systems that you have built, then that is one too many. And I think that, and that's really where actually having these kinds of challenges to actually continuously improve where we are. And I really appreciate, and I know within Aadhaar, we have been trying to do many of these things, and we have actually made lots of innovations, but actually bringing more people to actually think about this, how to move this system. And I think some of the things that you have to understand is these, it's interesting, right? While one of the things that you have to understand is that when you have a system that is as large as Aadhaar is, there's a lot of, whether there's an opportunity to go and kind of enroll 1 billion people again in a full stop, probably won't happen. So, but then you have to say, okay, what do I have and how do I actually get, better and improve better or new services based upon what has already is available here, right? And there is an ecosystem of data, ecosystem of devices, ecosystem, and how do you actually, and it is a continuum, right? So therefore, and you have to be backward compatible with what was there, but at the same time, how do I actually kind of move forward in what I need to do. And I think that's really that the algorithmic innovation and all of those things can play a role in actually kind of understand. And then, as you said, some of these longitudinal problems, as Professor Jain said, they have never been studied in the world so far. I think that we are going to see, and this is really a great, lab to actually understand how some of those things work and what are the right ways to actually, manage the life cycle, right? We life cycle of a system as large and as pervasive as Aadhaar. So I'll stop my comments at this time, but yes.
Thank you, Vivek. Yeah, so a lot of interesting points that you brought up, including, of course, when the Aadhaar was built, it was designed, the overall system was designed to last for a very long time, which requires a different way of thinking. But even issues like, what would devices that were used to capture at the beginning, how that would interact with things that are 20, 30 years later. Interesting questions as you brought up some of the things. It will be interesting to chat with you later. But the point that you raised last regarding the aging issues, longitudinal studies, we have world-level expert in that area with us, Professor Christoph Buch, who joined us just now. Thank you, Professor Buch, for joining us. He has done a lot of work. If I start reading his bio, then I would take up all the time that is available for us. So I would only mention a few lines from his bio. So he's a member of the Department of Information Security and Information and Communication Security Technology in the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, and also he has a joint appointment at the computer science faculty at the Hochschule Darmstadt University at Germany. Further, he lectures in biometric systems at the Technical University of Denmark since 2007. He's received his PhD in the field of computer graphics in 1997, and in the same year he joined Fraunhofer Institute for Computer Graphics, one of the leading institutes in that area, as the head of Department of Security Technology. And he has been responsible for the acquisition, the management, and control of various applied research and development projects. He has been, responsible for several large-scale coordinated projects. BioIS, BioFace, BioFinger. There are several efforts that he has built, which has led to solutions, large-scale multi-institution projects, and technologies that has been deployed. And if I start reading them, that would be a very long list. And I don't want to bore you with the raw data. It would be far more exciting to listen to him directly. So Professor Buch, we are so thankful for you that you could join us. And if you could make your initial statements, then we can take questions based on that. Okay. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you. Let me try to share my screen here, which is now the case. And you should now be able to see my slides. Can you confirm?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, very good. Good. The slides are available on my website. I have prepared a larger set with also aspects on presentation attack detection and morphing attack detection, but I learned earlier today that I have only 10 minutes, so I will take out the PAD and MAD topics unless you ask questions on this later on. I would focus on the challenges that I do see for large-scale biometric systems, such as your system. I always praise your system when I talk to my students. I say this is the largest biometric identification system that I know of, which is a legal system. And the points that I really see is sample quality. I want to elaborate on that one, and the aging aspect. For sample quality, a lot of work has been done, both in research and also in standardization. So I think you can harvest from that. For aging, I have a perspective, but I have little to really harvest here. So on biometric sample quality, the old saying, holes here, garbage in, garbage out. Yeah. So if we want to have a good biometric system with good recognition performance, low FPIR, low FNIR, we need to make sure that the data that is stored is really of good quality. There's a lot of research in this field that has been elaborated in the past, and all this research work has contributed to technical reports of ISO IEC, and we have now standards, a framework standard that I will talk about quickly. We have a standard for finger image quality. We have a standard for face image quality and for iris image quality. All these standards are relevant for you. I should say a caveat, the Part 4 standard is almost complete. It will be finalized in 2 weeks' time. The face image standard is more or less to be finalized in July, but publication will here be early 2025. The framework standard, this 29794-1, talks about quality measures. And why is this new concept being introduced? It serves as somehow the umbrella term for mentioning, on the one hand side, a unified quality score that shall be predictive for recognition performance. So if the expected recognition performance is poor, the quality score for both contributing images should be poor, or for one. And on the other hand, if there are dedicated defects that are causing a poor or medium unified quality score, you want to know what is wrong. What is the deficit? Is it the resolution? Is it the wrong pose angle? If it's a fingerprint, is too much pressure? What is the problem? And is this problem related to the capture device? Yeah, is there a deficiency, a systematic deficiency that you need to replace a dedicated device? If all these images stemming from one device are poor, you need to replace this, or you need to train the operators that are serving at that capture side, or is it an individual problem of the data subject, like the pose angle for face capturing and the like? The 29794 standard regulates that the quality measures shall be encoded in a range of 0 to 100, where the unified quality score has this notation of lower numbers are poor and higher numbers are good and better. Yeah. What is important is that a quality scoring algorithm, this is a figure from the framework standard, a quality scoring algorithm shall be predictive, shall predict the utility that you would observe if this sample is used in a recognition attempt, anticipating that the partner sample to which you compare to is a canonical sample, meaning of good and high quality. That's the assumption, and this is the basis for all the testing. My understanding is that you're talking today in the webinar about the biochallenge and testing campaigns. So if you want to test how good is a quality assessment algorithm, this correlation, to verify that this correlation exists, is of utmost importance. When we talk about correlation with biometric performance, you can have a philosophical discussion. What is more relevant, the false non-match event or the false match event? I think the majority of the community in the standardization world is of the opinion that the false non-match rate is what really counts. So the effect that we want to see is that when we reject poor samples, bad quality samples, and we have a starting error of, let's say, 5% false non-match rate, as you reduce from your data set, as you discard the poor images, your false non-match rate should go down. So if you have reduced 5% of the worst images, your false non-match rate should be with 0. This is the theoretical idea, but the reality is something like the blue curve here. The point of this figure is to illustrate the steeper, a so-called EDC curve, or error versus discard characteristics curve, is going down, the more predictive is the quality assessment algorithm for the recognition system that is in place. Yeah, obviously that depends on the data, that depends on the face recognition algorithm that you have in place. So EDC is this new concept which has been incorporated in the standard, and this is what we use. We have used this already when NFIQ was developed. NFIQ development spanned the time from 2010 to 2016. NFIQ is incorporated in this large-scale European system that is upcoming entry-exit system. And this legal text, this legal regulation explicitly mentions the need for NFIQ for fingerprint image quality assessment. Just a short recap of what it is. It is measuring the utility of a fingerprint sample by analyzing a number of handcrafted filters. So this is the pre-CNN time, where we looked at pressure, where we looked at rich value uniformity, and many other algorithms that then are accumulated to one unified quality score by a random forest. If you want to read more, or if you want to see the papers related to NFIQ, you can go to my website that is here at the bottom. Now, that was the past NFIQ development. What has started 2020, so the last 4 years, was the development of the equivalent counterpart for face image. Why was this needed? Again, the EES regulation dedicated, you need to measure whether an image at hand is compliant to the requirements from a canonical image, like anchored being in the 19794 standard or 39794 standard. So you'd likely know these requirements. You shall have a good pose. You should have the eyes open, the mouth closed, homogeneous background, and a like and a for. So the idea was to measure an image and then again to give actionable feedback if the quality measure was wrong, to inform what was wrong. And this is done both in the standard and in the corresponding reference implementation. The standard is, as I said, to be completed very soon. It comes along with the unified quality score. It comes with capture-related quality elements, such as a good exposure assessment, as illustrated here on the top. And it comes along with subject-related quality elements, such as the pose estimation or the distance of the capture subject to the device as you incorporate or as you assess the inter-eye distance. So at the end of this effort, you have a vector, and you can check for all the compliance requirements from ICAO, and you can sort of check mark everything is good with this image, and then it should also end up with a high unified quality score. Here are the 28 quality components indicated in detail, so you can see it deals with the illumination, it deals, of course, with the sharpness, it deals with the interaction and the behavior of the person as eyes open, mouth open, and alike. For the standard, again, like we have NFIQ for fingerprint, we have OFIQ for open source face image quality, a reference implementation that is available for all major operating systems. This serves as the reference implementation for the standard, and this has been kindly sponsored by the German BSI, and the criteria was all is open source, freely available under the MIT license, and low computational complexity. These were the criteria. The algorithms that were selected have been intensively tested by NIST under various testing categories. So this is anchored in the FATE report SIDD, and that was testing that took also the last 3 years to complete. Just a few highlights here. This is the unified quality score. It's basically a derivative of the MagFace algorithm with a ResNet 150 model under the hood for complexity reasons, and you can see higher numbers are better. So this facial image is closer to a canonical representation as the poor quality images here on the right-hand side. This MagFace algorithm that was used for OFIQ happens to be the best in the FATE SIDD test report, competing with 15 commercial submissions, 14, I must correct myself, 14 commercial algorithms, and you can see that the OFIQ algorithm is very steep and better performing than the competitors. To pick two examples from the quality components, many of the quality components can be answered by looking at the landmarks. So the facial landmarks are again extracted with an open source solution, the ADNet taken from GitHub. You see all the landmark coordinates, and if you have the landmarks, of course, you can identify the mid points of the eyes, and between the midpoints, you can identify the root of the nose. From the root of the nose to the chin, this is our reference measure T, and then the distance between these two landmarks in relationship to this reference denominator T is what measures the most closed property. Again, here we have test results from NIST-FATE, and we are quite happy and pleased with the outcome of that experiment. And it's also important that this is a quality component that has not found any bias and is working independent on the skin color property. Some work that went into OFIQ and which my group has contributed to is the assessment of neutrality of the facial expression. So what you want to have is the neutral expression here in the center and not the extreme expressions that are around. So the intention is to quantify the neutrality expression with the 100 and degrading quality with the other expressions that we have here. What we have done is to transform our 2D images to a 3D model. From all neutral images, we get a sort of an anchor point, the reference model in 3D. You see that this is a neutral model. If you then project one neutral image as a test image, you'll get this model here, and then you can measure the accumulation of all the vertex distances. So basically it's the norm of the vertex coordinates, and that accumulated over the entire model gives you how close a model is derivating from the neutral reference model. And you can see for the screen model here on the right hand side that there is a lot of deviation, dislocation of vertices, and this is highlighted by the red color. And if you then accumulate this, you get a larger distance value. If you subtract this from the one, you get the quality measure that we're interested in. Let me come to the aging aspect. We have worked on the aging aspect in the following understanding. We are of the opinion that aging is, of course, a severe problem for face recognition. Yeah, we have changing skin properties, we have changing morphology, we have droppy, baggy eyelid area and alike, and a force change of hairstyle and hair color, of course. But we don't see an aging problem for fingerprint recognition. We had 2-3 years ago a paper with ICPR where we investigated a long-term fingerprint data collection for more than 15 years, and we found no degradation of recognition performance over that time. For iris aging, I have no personal experience, but I refer to the study of Patrick Rother and his team from 2013, where he based on the work from Notre Dame University, investigated temporal stability and concluded that this is a well-solved problem. Now for face, we do have a problem, and what we do in our lab is that we simulate face aging. You can do so, for instance, interactively with the interface gun, where you project a real image into the latent space, and then you identify the direction of aging, and you can see that along this axis you can make your facial image older or younger. So age progression, age regression, that's what we do here, and you have a dedicated face boundary. This is the interactive part. We have a more sophisticated model that is also respecting the 3D components, and that has been published in last year IGCB proceedings. What I would like to do for a test, and I don't have the data to do so, but you likely do have the data, is the following, that given such age progression models, we can anticipate the quantization of the degradation of a comparison score, whether you have your probe face image and your reference face image at the same age range, say at the age of 48, or whether you have an older reference image with a time span, in this case, of 9 years. If we then anticipate that we have age progression or age regression in place, then what we could do is that we have an adjusted reference face image. So you take this old reference face image at the age of 39, your probe image is at the age of 48, and then you do an age progression, you synthetically update your image to become a quantified age of 48 label, and then see to which extent the comparison score is better than in the previous experiment. This is the data experiment that I would like to see. Frankly speaking, I don't have the data, and I stop here. My conclusions is control the quality of reference data by all means. For presentation attack detection and morphing attack detection, I praise do live enrollment wherever possible, no unsupervised capture process, and for sure no import of face images from passports, because you could have a morphed passport at hand. And for face recognition system, two strategies, periodical renewal of the reference data, or age-resistant face recognition systems, or face age progression synthetic data to minimize the comparison score degradation. That's all from my side. Here are again a few links and my contact points, and I'm happy to answer the questions and enter the discussion.
Thank you, Professor Buch, for a wonderful presentation. It looks like your algorithm will fail on your faces. You seem to have grown younger from 2015 picture of yours to your current one. So anyway, so thank you so much for all the panel members. We will now, have short amount of time. So I'll quickly ask one or two questions to each one of you, and then we can try to see we can incorporate any of the questions from the participants in the process. Otherwise, they would also, many of them have also been answered in the Q&A section. Okay, so first we will go back to Professor Jain, since you started the presentation. There was a question on, can we use hashes of faces to do recognition, and hence create a hash code which can be used for authentication that would improve the privacy. You have done a lot of work on this field in crypto biometrics, so I would pose that question to you. There was a question from the
Yeah, I mean, matching of faces and other modalities in fully homomorphic encryption domain has been done. It has been successful. There is perhaps a slight loss in accuracy due to quantization or other things. So that can be done. And if we are talking in the context of biometrics, in the context of mobile phones, I mean, Apple already does that. It secures the phone face image very securely on the phone and does the matching on the device. So that's possible. Fingerprint for a while didn't have a fixed length embedding, and now that we have a fixed length embedding, there is not much difference between face and fingerprint and iris. So I think encrypted matching is feasible.
Thank you, Professor Jain. Now I'll move on to Pramod. Some of the questions that we had initially thought of, you have already answered in your presentation. So I'll ask something slightly different. When you started designing Aadhaar as a biometric-based identity system, how much you have since then you've worked on several of these other layers of digital public infrastructure, including UPI and several others. How much of that larger picture did you have in your mind clear when you started designing Aadhaar? Because it has been extremely well designed in terms of how it has lasted to make it helpful for all these other layers. Was that thought process clear, or is it just the result of clear design principles that you applied to the design of Aadhaar?
The latter. I think I would be very silly to say we knew the next 15 years as like predicting the future, but design principles were very strong. We had very, very strong team, strong thinking, and quite a diverse team. So we actually had a good stress test of the design, not from a uniform one person thinking. We had quite a diverse team. In one sense, stress testing the longevity of the design. And much of that design principles came from the fact that things will break, things will scale like crazy, things will change So how do you accommodate change? How do you future-proof it? How do you isolate? How do you change, refactor? So I think we use the principles that, sort of we knew it and we applied it really well. But some things we found later. For example, we introduced eKYC as a service later. We knew face will come, but we were not at all ready because it was 2G, phones were just barely there, smartphones. But by the time we reached 600, 700 million, we had already 3G phones. Android phones were coming in thick and fast. So the face was picked up as an authentication modality a little later, appropriately so, when it was ready for doing it. But much of that we had, for very forward-looking view in the design, and the design principles held it. So we didn't know what was coming later. But I think looking back, we got most of the design right. But if you were to design today, you could actually ask very, very interesting questions because the smartphone penetration has gone through the roof. Connectivity is, near pervasive in India. It's so cheap, 10 cents a GB of data. It's so cheap. You could think about, especially on the authentication side, we could think about very, very interesting possibility that allows it. And this also somewhat answers Professor Jain's comment about if you have a high quality homomorphic, hash matches possible today, why can't we do it on the edge? Why do we need central servers and so on? So we could really ask interesting questions. And I think that's the reason for this bio challenge and this webinar in one sense. I presume UIDAI is truly looking at pushing its boundaries to what the next 10 years to offer, and while retaining the original principles of inclusion and choice for the people.
Absolutely. So this is at least envisioned to be only the first of several challenges in the future to come, including
Indeed,
what
it should be. Yeah.
Including what Professor Buch was talking about quality metrics, evaluation of those, how do they work on this case. I remember you talking about when the initial days, when we were designing things, talking about how to do minimal rather than how to increase the number of features. And
it has really worked out so well for Aadhaar, especially in the context of privacy. Minimalism is such a powerful idea that allows you to be very, very focused on purpose or why you exist, and not do anything more than what you exist and let other ecosystem partners do outside it, so that the overall design of the digital movement is not centralized. It's actually federated, much more decentralized, and hence supporting much better privacy. Now with the privacy law, it even strengthens India's story.
Thank you, Pramod. So now I go to Vivek in that order. So Vivek, you have been kind of the key biometric person within Aadhaar, who have kind of led the initial implementation and later, more importantly, the sustenance, the changes that you have seen. So over the last 15 years that you have been involved with this, what changes in the biometric infrastructure internally, the solutions have you seen which surprised you in some sense, like what you did not think about when you started out with that? Over a period of time, what things that you think were that's interesting, that I did not expect this?
No, I think first of all, yes, I think that I did not expect, but I think I started at Aadhaar when the first Aadhaar was issued, and I was there when we had 1.2 billion Aadhaar. So I have seen this story from the insides. I think in the system itself, I think there were a number of things, right? In the beginning, I think we theoretically said that that when we capture this many biometrics, we should be able to meet our accuracy requirements and stuff like that. And to actually see that happen was something which was interesting. That I think that we met and exceeded. The one interesting thing that we realized is that, I think, and this is part of the things in the system itself, is that when we build a multi-biometric system, we designed it assuming that all the biometric captures are actually kind of, belong to the same individual. And that was sometimes not the case. And that led to very interesting problems in the system, which actually built it's a whole different level. And I think that if you can say that, hey, there is no doubt in my mind that as also Dr. Buch also said, that if we have good quality and we have this many biometrics, you can deduplicate much more than 2 billion. You can duplicate everybody in the world. I honestly believe, from what I have seen, that when there is a failure to do this, it is almost always because of quality, and it is almost always because of quality, or it is because of, as I said, unexpected things where these enrollments actually don't necessarily, and some of them are, there are many different kinds of things. Over time, we became much better at kind of controlling what happens on the edge and things like that, and being able to kind of do. So I think that is one of the things that certainly was there. I think that, yeah, it's what and then it's when you do things at scale, making even a small change takes a long time. Okay, it's not. I mean, you may even know that this is the right thing to do, but for example, maybe we had 500 million enrollments, and then we changed some of the providers. Okay, and then we said we want to redo and we did that even actually now recently when the galleries were at 1.3 or 1.4 billion, and the ability to actually redo some of those things, or to actually do something different with that same set actually becomes a fairly large exercise. Even a small change to project and say put some new thing in there and make sure that the entire system works, right, is one of the challenges and as the system becomes larger and more pervasive, that becomes harder. Whenever you have a kind of an empty, a fresh slate, it's actually easier to think of things, but then actually to be able to layer on while making existing systems that work. I think some of those challenges are different. For example, as Professor Jain said in the beginning, when we started, we took a view that nobody will be denied an Aadhaar for lack of quality. And I think that that is probably today, if and as this becomes more and more important, I mean, on that scale, I think that because maybe we have been as a system moving towards better understanding at exactly at the front end to say that the quality needs to be better. And even if you see, there's obviously quality because the capture was not proper. The fundamental biometrics of the people, of the individual was fine. But then we do actually face real situations, especially when you're talking about 1 billion people in India, where that is not the case. There is a fundamental issue, and that inclusion was very important to us. And that kind of how nuanced we were in understanding those two things differently. I mean, I would have paid maybe a little bit more attention. But I think, though, having said that, I think that all that we actually think for the scale that we are at, the quality is actually quite amazing, and it is also related to the design, right? That all of these things were standardized and everything was done in kind of and how devices were certified, how things were done, and I think and all of those and the software being fully in the control of UID, I think made some of those things better. But having said that, maybe even more focus on something like that would have made a difference, because as I said, right, that's still the record, right? 15 years later, right? So
it's fascinating what has happened. Yeah, I have been,
yeah.
not an
You also have
insider,
known
not
what's
an
up.
outsider, a co-traveler for the whole Aadhaar journey. So it's very fascinating to see that inside. There's one question I would like to ask Professor Christoph Buch regarding the quality metrics that you talked about. You mentioned to this during your talk that from an Aadhaar's perspective, quality metric is usually something that is deployed at the edge to figure out whether the capture has been good enough or not. And in that sense, you mentioned is the correlation between the quality metric that is computed and the final matching metric that happens inside that matters. That that's the goal of the quality metric at that point. So especially with this modern deep learning based solutions coming up, and that keeps on changing, it looks to me like a cat and mouse game where the algorithms are trying to do better and better on poor quality data, and the quality metric is trying to catch up with saying, can I predict how the newer algorithms are trying to do? So can you comment on that dynamic and how entity like Aadhaar can keep up with that story?
We need to see the history of the quality requirements. Yeah, and a good example was just the post in the chat. I did not answer this yet regarding the homogeneous background. This is a requirement that was formulated back 20 years ago, 2004, when face recognition algorithms had a problem with the Bézier background. That's not the case anymore. So we can have a good measurement that the background is uniform, but if the background is not uniform, most of the face recognition systems don't care. So you will have an EDC curve that is basically flat, and a flat EDC curve means the face recognition system is agnostic regarding this specific defect. Yeah, so that's, I think, my perspective on that. Today's algorithms don't care about background.
So if I may add, one of the things unique to Aadhaar is that it uses multiple matchers. It does not use a single matcher. So that becomes a problem of using a matcher independent quality measure at the sensor level, because each vendor has its own quality measure internally. So that the same image may be sent to 3 different matchers or randomly decided which matcher it goes to, and that is not typically done in any other biometric deployment.
I agree, but still the methodology of the EDC curve and this steepness of the EDC curve holds. If you go into the NIST report, the NIST FATE report, you will see that the curve that I had displayed on my slide is a curve that is computed with the 15th best systems that are available with NIST. Yeah, so it's not a curve that is computed with one face recognition system, even with 15. So you have 3 systems in the back engine. This is fantastic, but you could compute this EDC curve for all 3 of them as an average decrease.
So we're really running out of time. So I would like to ask one question to all of the panelists together and wrap with that. So, this effort of doing this bio challenge is one way that Aadhaar is doing to connect with the research community and the vendors to open up some way of opening up the data to running algorithms on their data without actually revealing the data at all. So could you suggest any other activities that Aadhaar can do, especially Professor Buch, from your experience? What other kind of activities that Aadhaar could do which could foster the relationship between identity and entities like Aadhaar and the research community and the solution development community?
I think the interaction between operators and academia and industry is of utmost importance. Yeah, I mean, your webinar served this purpose. From my side, I'm linked with the European Association for Biometrics. We do together with NIST next year, April 1st to 3rd, again, the International Face Performance Conference. So mark this in your calendar. This is an event where we'll have an opportunity to interact on site and also remotely if you want to join in. Online. We have in the European Association for Biometrics way more activities. So whenever you have an idea or a problem, pose it to us and we can arrange a virtual meeting and have invitation to academics to this dedicated problem or dedicated challenge and an exchange of opinions.
Thank you, Professor Buch. Any other comments from the panelists, if any of you would like to chime in?
Yeah, I think one of the things that are interesting is that I think obviously this bio-challenge is something that we have internally at Aadhaar, has said that this is probably something interesting, but maybe even having this kind of discussion with a larger group as to, hey, could there be things that would make sense, that for which we probably Aadhaar could create a representative data set for which algorithms could so for that kind of a discussion about possible problems, and you have that and then that might spur ideas that, hey, these are the kinds of new challenges that should come out, like kind of a feedback to identify what might be unique challenges where what the kinds of data that Aadhaar has could be helpful in solving. And I think that's something that rather than, I mean, it's very good that we are putting challenges out, but I think maybe getting that feedback as well from people as to, hey, is this possible? I mean, sometimes it's not possible. Clearly, the rule about data being everything needs to be within that is absolutely something that is a line in the sand for Aadhaar. But maybe what are interesting kinds of problems, right? That you could look at, like for example, if you look at touchless biometrics, the interesting problem as far as we are concerned is that the reference biometric will be on a slap scanner, right? And you have to match that with the touchless thing. How do you actually? That's a kind of an interesting data set. And I know Professor Buch said that fingerprint is not impacted by age. And actually, that's not what we have seen in practical circumstances in India. I'm just saying, maybe it's not from where you are, but I'm saying running a practical system, I see something different, right? So, therefore, that is something that those are kinds of things where you have some view. And that for there we may actually put out some data, but actually understanding what are interesting kinds of problems and how to look whether possible to actually have interesting.
Can I say a few things, Anoop?
Please.
We have been talking about the world's largest biometric system, but in terms of biometric research, India has one of the weakest biometrics research groups, and I think there has been a disconnect between Aadhaar and the academic institutions like IIT. IIT's academic in IIT, while working in AI, don't understand what are the problems which Aadhaar is facing. And Aadhaar depends on the vendors and does not use the resources to build the manpower in India for biometrics. So here is an example. Now that the generative AI is so popular, why can Aadhaar use generative AI capabilities to put out some data which reflects old age, fingerprint, face, iris,
absolutely. I think
time separated data up to 40 years, 50 years. And this data, large amounts of data, and I think the attorneys have to answer this question, whether this artificially generated data can be released even though the real data was used to train the AGI models, right? So there are some issues here which I think UIDAI can be more proactive. Just like they're putting out this challenge, UID can also put out a list of challenging problems and then fund researchers in India to work on it. We give out 50 lakh, 1 crore rupee grant, 1 year, 2 year project with some strong deliverables. But for specific problems. And I think this will really close the gap to some extent.
I'd like to comment.
Yes,
Professor.
please.
Yeah, so what I missed mentioning earlier was this entire initiative of having the bio challenge stemmed from this very idea of how UIDAI and academia will collaborate to find value mutually for the ecosystem. And through this selection of a knowledge partner like IIIT Hyderabad, we established many more projects which enabled us, and only one of them is this bio challenge competition, which enables the ecosystem to put up their SDK, and Professor Anoop will be talking more about it, and through that platform be able to benchmark themselves against other competitors. And I'd like to differ a bit, though I don't have the numbers to support me. A lot of startup ecosystem is budding, mushrooming across in this field. We are talking to them in the field of fraud detection, in the field of face matching, spoof detection in face, finger, and many more. And the objective of having this competition is to be able to give the impetus to the ecosystem to be able to participate, benchmark themselves. And fortunately for us, it is an international competition. So we will be able to benchmark our technologies with our competitors or our partners abroad, and we will be able to find these more challenges. And the very intent of having these discussions is to find more challenges which are bugging or troubling us, and be able to collaboratively find solutions for the same.
Thank you, Ms. Tanshri. So that's also a point for me to say that we are really running short of time and we need to move on to the last phase. So I would like to thank all the panel members profusely for spending your time. I know all of you are extremely busy people, but taking the time out of more than an hour and a half now that you've spent here, and your comments would really help the audience. And this video will also be made available on the YouTube channel of Aadhaar. So more people would be able to take advantage of your comments, your point of views and insights. So once again, thank you all of you. Thanks for joining. And we will now move on to the last part of this webinar, where we will talk quickly about the bio challenge itself and then conclude. So thank you, Professor Buch. Thank you, Pramod. Thank you, Vivek. And thank you, Professor Jain, for your time. Okay, now that we conclude the panel discussion part, we will move on to the last phase, which is about the bio challenge. So I will quickly introduce the bio challenge competition to you, and more details will be made available on the website, which you can take a look at it. So let me start with sharing my screen. I hope that the screen is now visible. So even though I'm making the presentation, this effort is primarily run inside Aadhaar and a joint effort between Aadhaar and IIIT Hyderabad. So as it has been mentioned multiple times till now, we are running a competition of benchmarking biometric verification SDKs. And we are running the competition in 3 different categories: fingerprint, iris, and face. These are one-to-one verification challenges, not the one-to-one deduplication challenge. So this seems to be relatively the easy problem, and there are already solutions available. But what is special about this particular challenge is that the data that is chosen is very, very special. the first image that you capture would be of people between the ages of 5 and 10. These are young children. And then the second impression of the same person captured at least 5 years later than that, many times at the age of 15 or more. So that gives you an age gap of 5 to 10 years, and especially at a time when there is significant growth in the person, physical growth in the person. And that means that there is a lot of physiological changes to especially the face, and also some level of change to the fingerprint and iris. And the type of data that is chosen is also significantly, it's a significantly large database of about 30,000 mated pairs, so which means about 60,000 images of unique biometrics. And the non-mated pairs would be about 300K, so that you can actually do some of the more stricter performance metrics. So that is what is made available, and for this competition purposes. And the other aspect is that this data has been kind of selected uniformly from all across India in terms of, so a lot of diversity has been kept in mind in terms of the region, the rural, urban, gender divide, and so on. So it's actually a very, very representative data that has come into this particular competition. Okay. So what is the goal of the competition? The primary thing is to assess the effectiveness of existing algorithms on this kind of challenging data without revealing the data outside, because one of the primary mandates, requirements of Aadhaar, especially from a privacy perspective, is that the data cannot be revealed outside. So how do we conduct a competition where, or make this available to the research community and the solution development community without actually revealing the data? And this form of the competition where you submit the SDKs to Aadhaar, where since the data cannot come out of Aadhaar, the solutions can go into Aadhaar and can be tested inside. That's the key idea, and be tested on a large, diverse data set from across India. So it enables comprehensive algorithm testing capabilities in terms of real-world applicability, and understand the capabilities of the best algorithms in this particular context of aging, especially at the young age. It also acts as a platform for researchers and industry leaders to evaluate their SDKs, and not just the accuracy, but also the computational power or efficiency and so on. And the hope is that this is just the first set of competitions that are running. There will be many others to come. One-to-one matching SDK with age as the key is only the first such thing. And also it would encourage research in the field of age invariant biometric recognition. So what are the eligibility requirements? Almost anybody, researchers, developers from industry, academia, and other research institutions can participate. You need to be, of course, an active biometric researcher to be able to compete at anywhere close to in these categories with sufficient background in developing biometric technologies. We need to ensure that it's being done by reasonable people. So we require a government issued ID card for registration, and then the participant must sign an agreement affirming that the specific legal clauses that are in the competition's guidelines, so that you can register and then participate. So you typically register first you need to register yourselves on the website, enter your basic personal data, and you will receive an email from Aadhaar with a consent form. You need to download it, print it, sign it, and then upload it back. And once that is done, there is somebody from inside the Aadhaar's legal team will review that. And once you are approved, you will be given a link to create a username and password. So the first time when you do this, it would take this process to ensure that this is done by serious people, legal persons, not a spam attack there. So once that is done, then you would be able to submit algorithms through that username and password for multiple challenges. There will be a website that is up with this. Once this come out, you will get to know. We will give you the link to the website towards the end of this presentation and through the chat. And then you would be able to see, once the competition goes live, you will be able to see a website like this where you can see the individual challenges that are live, and then you can submit. So you can go to the specific challenge section and download. There is a challenge description, and also we'll give you a sample submission file which can be used to create your submission. The sample submission file will include a README file, which would give you the details of how to implement the API. So specifically in this particular competition, we are asking you to submit a Docker file which contains the key functionalities that we are asking to implement for verification, which we'll get to in the next slide. And also the participant must upload a submission description explaining the basics of what they are trying to do in their algorithm. Primarily, you need to implement two APIs. One is enroll and one is match. Enroll is essentially templating. So you're given an image of a particular biometric modality and you create a template out of it. That is the enrolled API. And the second API would be given two templates and you are supposed to return a match score. That is the match API. So all that you need to do is to implement these two APIs, and the sample that is given to you is a fast API project, but the users can implement it in any other framework or programming language as long as the API specifications are followed. This a quick view of those two. I'm not going to go into the details of it. You can take a look at it after this is made available to you. You will have, again, as I said, there is a enroll API and a match API that needs to be implemented. Okay. The Docker image, there are some restrictions as for this particular competition that it has to be compatible with Ubuntu 20 LTS, and the submission should be designed as a single-threaded and should not rely on parallel processing or multi-threaded processing for performance. Remember, we are doing one-to-one matching only. So it's templating is a single image which is templated, and the second API is a one-to-one matcher between two templates. The implementation must run on in non-interactive batch mode. You cannot have any GUI calls in it because this has to be run by a evaluation server that runs that uses your API to template and match the biometric samples. The submitted code should not try to do anything other than just implement these APIs. So you need to strictly adhere to these requirements, and it should not make any calls to any external services. This will be run inside a sandbox without any internet connection. So if it makes any call outside, your service will not run, and you will not be able to get a result for your submission. And that's basically the requirements. We also have put some restriction on the time so that it doesn't just hog the evaluation servers. So at most 10 seconds for the enrollment or templating call, and at most 1 second for the matching of two templates, which are quite generous for any practical implementation. The results and leaderboard would be published based on different error metric, including FMR 1000, FMR 10,000, and so on, and even FMR 0 in some cases. We will give you the details of it once the challenges go live. The details will be on the description of the challenge. Once your code is executed, once the results are obtained, you will be able to see the results of your algorithm, and then you can decide, as a registered user, you can decide to publicize that in the leaderboard or not. So even that provision is provided as of now. We will decide that based on the participation. So that's all what I wanted to say about the bio challenge competitions. We are expecting to bring these out by sometime next month. And once the challenge is out, you will be able to go through the website details of each of the competitions and the participation within that. Okay, so I will stop here. If you have any specific questions, I would be happy to answer. But since there is a time crunch, I would be able to take only 2 or 3 questions. So if you have anything specific, please feel free to ask in the Q&A section, or it would be easier in the Q&A section if you can type.
Professor Anoop, we should put the link to the site on our chat so that people can at least see on the page. More information is available. So I'll request my team to put it on the chat.
Please do that. Yeah. So this is the first time we are announcing it. We will definitely be giving you far more details as things go live, which will be happening soon. I think, let me see. Okay, so there is a question. Can we submit the solution as a company or as an individual? So you can do it either as a company or as an individual, but even if for a company, you need to have one person as a point of contact whom we can communicate to. And you need to have, if you are submitting as a company, then you need to make sure you need to have some letter from the head of the company which say that you are representing the company. But otherwise, yes, you can also do it as an individual researcher. Okay, or developer. It doesn't matter. Like your formal qualifications are not the point, but making sure you are a serious competitor is what matters. The first challenge, will it be fingerprint or based on all modalities? The first one that will open up would be fingerprint, but soon the iris and face challenges will also open up. Okay. I guess some of the questions are not related to this webinar. They are related to Aadhaar issuing. That is a completely different topic. Okay, I think if you have any more questions, then thank you all. The link to the BioChallenge website has been posted there. You can try to access it, preferably through a desktop app. That will probably work much better for you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. So we will stop here, and I would hand over to Shri R.P. Singh, who would take over from here for concluding. He's the ADG of biometric. He looks after the biometric solutions within Aadhaar. RPG, please.
Thank you, Professor Anoop. I hope I'm audible to you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So last 2 hours, even though we have exceeded the time, has been exhilarating, and we didn't even know that we have crossed the time limit. So that is the level of the discussion that we had today. So thank you, Professor Anoop. First, I would like to thank Shri Amit Agarwal, CEO UIDAI, for his vision and direction to launch this competition to the world. As the first challenge, we are launching what you have proposed right now. And post that, we're going to have multiple scenarios and the problem statement coming forward. I also thank all our distinguished panelists who joined today, Professor Jain, Dr. Pramod, Dr. Raghavan, and Professor Buch, for their thought-provoking insights and also their suggestions that came during the discussion. So I've taken the notes. Definitely, I have taken the notes, and we'll try to work jointly with IIIT and the other ecosystem partners to implement as many as we can. I take this opportunity also to thank Ms. Tanushi, DDG Technology Center at UIDAI, for spearheading this competition in enabling it. And without her guidance, this would not have been possible. I can't thank Professor Anoop any further much, being the moderator. Without you, it was not possible at all. I'm thankful for the participants and the viewers who have joined today and giving your time for our discussion today. As Professor Anoop has said, that we're going to launch it on 15th of July. And I hope to see you all there on 15th of July. And I can assure you that you will not be disappointed in our challenge and what Professor Anoop has mentioned. So I will not take much of your time, and see you all on 15th of July. Thank you, everyone, and good night from India. Thank you all.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.